We're honored to have Samanta Cortes here speaking to us about how we can take our alpaca to a different level. Samanta is a recognized leader and trendsetter in the fashion and textile, embroidery, and embellishment industry. So we have an expert here to leverage and listen to. Right? Her extensive production and design experience in the fashion business, Samanta has been able to fulfill a need in the apparel and home furnishing industry. As a result, she's developed Fashion Designs Concepts, a company that specializes in assisting designers in the development of their embroidered and beaded prototypes, and launched her own business 13 years ago, working with just one head embroidery machine out of a small space in the heart of New York City's Garment Center. So within a 2-year period, she was able to move her operation to an entire floor. Samanta travels to Europe, on a seasonal basis, researches the latest trends in construction, different techniques, which will lead to the creation of her own prototype collection. Right? In addition, she's become a well-respected trendsetter in the field of embroidery and embellishments. For this reason, she's now embarked on a new educational venture, the TX Institute, as she saw a need to provide training to a new category of students, set some new educational standards, and expose the industrial equipment that will give an overview of the textile machinery industry and different opportunities in terms of creativity and careers to the general public. Please join me in welcoming Samanta Cortes.
I'm actually honored to be here and spend some time with you going over the aspects of the manufacturing. What I'm going to be touching base today is what are we doing after the shearing of the alpaca in a production level. A lot of people here, they do a lot of home alpaca, and they take the alpaca and do it. I'm just showing you all the manufacturing steps. Like you said, one of the main factors that I've been really concentrating in lately has been on to manufacturing and trying to bring everything back to the US. For us to bring back things to the US, we really have to understand the infrastructure. Right now, unfortunately, with everything leaving to China 20 years ago and slowly going, that totally went into shambles. So it's rebuilding the infrastructure, and that all comes with education. A lot of my peers in the industry closed shop or just ended up going to another industry and totally omitted, they don't even want to look back. Now that the infrastructure is changing, we're trying to pull them in again, and they're like, I'm sorry, I'm doing so much in real estate, I really don't want to go back there. So we have to educate and bring to everybody what is the meaning, what is the basic steps of manufacturing. I know it's not going to come from in the next few months or the next few years, but by educating and having people understand what it takes to manufacture, we can slowly build it at a high-end level. Now, this is giving you guys a very big opportunity. If you are, breeders, and it's bringing you a big opportunity. So, all that being said, I'm just showing you all the steps, because one of the things that I always say, it doesn't matter if you're just doing breeding the alpacas. You should know every aspect of where it's going to. And not be so tied down on, okay, it has to go to this place and this place has to really, and follow it through, but just have an idea. And that's what I'm here for. I have a company called Fashion Design Concepts. I ended up closing it a few years ago and taking some time off. Unfortunately, my dad got really sick, and I said, you know what, I'm done. I took some time off, and he's with me, and it was a good time. But that I spent with him. But Fashion Design Concepts, when I was talking to you a little while ago about understanding all aspects of production, when I started in the industry, I started as a designer. As a designer, I went into production. and I did purchasing of trims. At that time that I purchased trims, I ended up in a job change that I ended up selling and carrying a suitcase all around the garment center selling trims. And I'm like, I'm supposed to be a designer. This is stupid. So, but all that being said, it was amazing. It was worth it at the time. There was a lot of changes going around, and I got to meet a lot of designers and love it, and loved working with them into the aspect of embroidery. That was my concentration. I got to meet a lot of the designers, and a few of the designers that I've met, I noticed a difference between the designers. Some would just sketch something and send it away, and just, I don't care how it's done, I just need it done. And some would go into the nitty-gritty of the details of to where, how it's done, and how do I want it done. And not that at the end it's gonna end up that way, but it was amazing that they knew about it, and they would touch those subjects to such detail that it would make a much clearer idea of your final product. There was less mistakes happening, but there's only really 2 designers in the 20 years of business that I was in that really happened. So what is done with my alpaca fibers? Is it possible in manufacturing? Can this be made? Could it be done in the US? And I absolutely believe so. We still have the infrastructure, we still do. But like I indicated before, it has to be in high end. And this is where it's a great opportunity for any alpaca, because we can complete the product from the beginning to end. The reason this is possible, I'm not sure, a lot of people are not familiar with what's been happening in the garment center and in the whole fashion world. Wednesday, April 24th of 2013, in Bangladesh, there was this huge a collapse of a building. It's Arena Plaza, and it changed the view of the industry. The question was laying on, where are you really buying your stuff? I'm not sure how many of you have a Walmart close by and heard how Walmart's trying to do a US made and try to attempt to bring more US product. A lot had to do with a lot of the coalition that I started in New York with a few people. It's called Save the Garment Center, we got a buzz from a film from HBO, and it's been a rolling, and then this happens. And it's like, see, that is why. A lot of the designers weren't protecting where their product was being made, not looking at the factories that they were doing. There was a lot of hazards. So even though some people, hey, I do it. If you live on a budget, you need to buy something, and you buying a $100 shirt versus a $20 shirt, you think about it twice. But a lot of the people that can afford it will think twice before doing that, because they're conscious about what they want, they're conscious about where it's being made, they're conscious about these things. So us that really don't have the budget to be able to do it, there's still going to be products made, but then you will look at the label and make sure it's done and protected, or we can push, or a lot of the things that we are doing as an organization is trying to see and really try to step up in regulations and looking at different things that are not beyond the educating the US market, but hey, where's our product come from? Not just try to do something in the consumer world, a buzz, something to have them look, okay, wait a second, what's going on? So this is giving us an advantage of all American made. Here in this presentation, I will be teaching you the thread spinning. And this is all the manufacturing aspect in sense of the mills, the textile creation, the different type of textiles. And I am going to be briefly talking about all of them and going into details in some specific ones. So if I don't go into details, it's not that the knowledge is not there, it's just we don't have enough time into this presentation to cover all aspects of it. So the design and manufacturing. And the way I laid this out is actually interesting. As a designer, a lot of the people look at, there's a few ways where we look at the product and how it's done. and how we make the product. In the US, they've taught for many ages not looking at, you're looking at the textile and then you design everything else. So the way it's structured, well, I'll explain to you a little bit more detailed, is a little bit different. Then we have the final product. And I keep on calling product. I'm not saying only garments. We're not all talking about garments. We have accessories, we have scarves, we have bags, car seats. There's all different type of products that could be done. Where does the natural fibers come from? Besides all the synthetic that we all know, polyester, nylon, and all of that, we have the cotton, the bamboo, the flax, that's linen, the cohair. Did you know they take out of coconut? Take out some hair. So jute, agave, get some sugar on that garment, on the fabric. And the hemp. I'm leaving that one open. So when it comes from animals, we have here the Angora rabbit. Then we have the quivet. That's the ox. It's the yak. Actually, it's interesting. I was reading a little bit about the yak, and it says that it's like it creates heat for the animal, and it doesn't smell. It's like it creates an antibody that stops the smell. You look at the animal, and you really think that it's a very smelly animal, and no, they're actually not. Both the ox and the yak come from the, oh gosh, went totally left. It comes from up high in Asia. Then we have the camel. We all know where the camel comes from. And actually, the camel is very interesting because it's actually said it's a family of alpaca and all of those. So I was going to change the slide to the other one. It just didn't fit, so I kind of kept it there. But then we have the silkworm. And these are just a few. So here we have the cashmere that comes from the cabra hibiscus, the mohair that comes from Angora, and the merino. Guanaco, the vicuña, the alpaca, and the llama. They're all from the same family of the fibers. And like I said, the camel should have been there, so. But it's the same type of fiber, and they're also cute. The guanaco and the vicuña are mostly found up in Peru, up in the top of the mountains. That actually, I'm not sure if anybody has heard. I've just, the past few days, a lot of the animals up there kind of did not make the cold weather. So it's the opposite, and when it's summer here, it's cold over there, and it's 50,000 alpacas passed away. It's really, really, So here we're going to discuss on the spinning of the yarn. The spinning of the yarn has been something that it's been happening from 400 BC, it's before Christ. It's been for many years, been doing the same thing that we've been doing to put warmth on our body. There's two types of spinning in the industry of spinning yarns. We have here the mule spinning, where these machines go back and forth. And this factory, I was in China recently, and I was visiting a cashmere factory. It's the closest to the alpaca in sense of the process. But in this mill, they had all the fiber laid out, and these are the steps of what they utilized. And it might slightly change when it is alpaca, but it's the closest that you're going to find into the. And I will be talking about the other spinning, and that's the cotton. So here, this he's kind of opening up the fibers and tossing it, putting it into the machine. The machine spits it out and opens up the fibers. The batch that he bought was the same type of fiber. He concentrates on bleaching it and dyeing it to his own colors. And I know that's, for you guys, it's like, oh no, why are you gonna dye it? Just buy it the same color. We have 22 shades and we kind of have to do it this way. But when they're looking at cashmere, it's more of a mass production type of thing. So they rather buy it, bleach it. If they have a certain type of fiber, that's fine with it. But if not, it's mass production. They just want to get cashmere sweaters out. This machine here does the combing and separating of the fibers. It kind of opens up and takes off, it adds a little bit more to that machine. In the cashmere, they had to go through this process several times to really take away the fiber. And I know that that's one of the differences between the alpaca versus the cashmere. The alpaca, you just pass it through once. Then they put it to the bleaching or washing. The goats leave out this type of chemical in their body. And this chemical in their body that has to be washed out regardless of what it is. You can't process it naturally. You know, you could process it naturally, but a lot of people are more allergic to it because they have all these, like, chemicals that either if you take it out and bleach or if you dye it, it's still going to be there. Then the blending room. All these fibers get put into the blending room and combined. Because you're dyeing in such small batch to be able to control things, at the end, you put it all into the blending room, it kind of blends it together. And this is the time where if you're combining, if you do have the cashmere and you want to combine it with a percentage of cotton to make it a little bit, or silk to change this is where you would do it. You would put it into the machine, it blends it, it shoots it through, and it shoots it to the other machines. This is what it ends up looking like. So this is the cording machine. You place they place, or automatically it gets shot to this machine. And the carding machine has thousands of needles. And what it does is opens up the fiber and makes sure that it's aligning it. I'm showing you several pictures of it because it's interesting, the whole process of where it gets in and it just keeps on going through the different type of machine, the machine, and keeps on aligning itself. When you start seeing the alignment, this is the machine when it's on. See how it starts getting in the straight rows. The alignment, and these are things that you guys do already. You do with the hand brush. So it's very similar, the process. I'm just showing you the industrial equipment onto it. And it's, this is the web. It ends up being, here the web gets dropped down into this conveyor belt, and then it converts into roving. This is a thinly aligned yarn without any strength. When you look at the roving, very similar to what you do. If you look at this roving closely, you have all the smaller threads lined up. So the mule spinning is a little bit different than the other spinning that I will show you, where the cotton process is done. The mule spinning pulls the machine all the way back and forward. At the same time, it's twisting the yarn and putting into these little cones that you see right here in the bottom. So at this point, this is where it's actually combines the yarns, and it tells you what type of weight. When they say 40, 20, or the different weights, this is what's programmed on the machine. So besides pulling the yarn and twisting it, it's gathering 2 yarns and plying it and getting it to the weight that was requested by the client of the spinning mill. You see the little cones on the bottom? These are actually running out. What it does, this is what it comes out of the mule, and it gets put into the winding machine. So these winding machines create the cones. You see how the little spools, and those spools were really big. They were a lot bigger, and that was a lot smaller. This is actually the cashmere mill. They do the dyeing process before the spinning of the mule and twisting. I know of cotton companies that do all bleach it all, and then they dye the whole cones. And it takes well in the thread process dyeing. But this one in particular, they like to do the dyeing before the process is created. And here we have the ring spinning. The ring spinning is actually mostly done with cotton or the other natural fibers that is not animal fiber. Here we have one of those ring spools. You can come and take a look at it a little later. I don't know if somebody wants to pass it down. But everybody knows what a cotton field looks like. So this fiber comes into, this is actually already cleaned and processed. I'm not going to go through the cleaning process of it, but this is cleaned and washed and already ready to go. Their slivers are a little bit different. The slivers are piled into bales, and then they combine the slivers into the roving. They combine the two to the slivers, and then they keep on combining the colors into the slivers, and then they convert it into the roving. So then their rovings are laid up on top of the portion, and then you have in the bottom, it lines up to the thread, the final thread that's going to be used. These threads are all into indications of what the mills want. The fabric mills want. Now, I explained a little while ago of all the process of the spinning. This is more of a upgraded version of a new factory today. Then you have here, this is actually Sowers, one of the machines that create the spinnings. You know, at this point, do you guys have any questions? I know this is more similar to what you guys have done in more of the homeowners, but if there's any questions, the manufacturing aspects, feel free to ask. Yes?
I have never heard of alpaca fiber being bleached. And I'm going to go home and take some white fiber and put some bleach on to see if it works.
I don't think you would want to, because you already have the 22 shades, and the purity of what you have right now. This is when I talked to you about bleaching, it wasn't this was a cashmere factory.
Right.
They do.
It's cashmere, but does anybody know, can alpaca be bleached? Don't use chlorine. No. I'm going to use a hydrogen or something, but I just don't know.
I mean, it would be an interesting, where we went to the alpaca factory today, and I mean the farm today, and she dyes it, but I didn't see anything about her bleaching it.
Because many people over dye, because then you have a base color, and you can over dye to get a more solid color.
Yeah.
It's a way of making things more standard, but I'm just not familiar with bleaching.
I could imagine it ends up being very like the cotton, that it gives like a yellowish versus fiber, but I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I would be lying if I knew. Yeah, you should. I'm going to give you my card and give me the findings. I love those stuff. And how many of you have seen a weaving? You all have. Okay, now I'm getting off the stage. No. Well, this is actually the steps and process to get after all the spools are created. If you see all the spools back here, depending on the indications, a lot of the factory, they give their own indication because they want the fabric a certain way. You have all the spools in the back, and it all get fed through the machine. Then we have the alignment of the yarn. After all the alignment of the yarn and the cleaning of the yarn, it gets put on these big rollers. These big rollers create this. It creates you have them all aligned properly, controlled at the different weights. On many are in. This gets fed in through the machine. So we have the warp, and then you have the machine automatically going through the weft. And then you have the machine that pushes it forward. The same automatic machine, obviously, pushes it forward. After the process is complete, you have the knives that cut off the edge. This is it's actually much more interesting to really look at it in person. You guys have seen it. The rooms are so loud, it's so noisy, and I actually love it. It's like so amazing and so impressive, and I really encourage every single one, if you got an opportunity to go into a weaving mill, that they have the whole process, because sometimes they have the alignments of the yarn in one factory and they ship it to the factory. You order it and you go through another step. But just seeing the whole vertical operation onto this, it's very interesting. This is another type of process, that's the jacquard. The jacquard is very interesting because you have, besides all the colors that you're putting into the program, there's some hefty programming that's done on the computer. The programming is actually interesting. And just going back to the designers that had no clue, I would go into, oh, I need this embroidery done, and then I would go there and they would give me a jacquard. And I'm like, this is fabric, you know that? I know, isn't that embroidery great? And I'm like, and they're paying you how much? It's really, it was bad. So when you get a designer that really knows their things and knows the difference in a jacquard, because some of those jacquards, the weaves are way open, and in the back you can see that they're open, so they kind of look like if it's an embroidery, but come on, fabric versus So I don't have these are one of the ones. I'm glad that we did the felting today at the farm, because this is another process that you could do with your, I'm not sure if anybody's aware, there's actually a knitting machine right now that does complete garments. It's been out for a while, but they're pushing it a lot. They're pushing it a lot now. Shimasuki has come up with this, the technology. It's very similar to the tubular knitting, but it really creates a whole complete garment. It's a little bit slower than the other type of machine that I'm showing you. That's why a lot of the factories are a little hesitant in purchasing that versus buying, just the flatbed that I'll show you in a minute. But it's a very interesting, the fact that you could, create a garment, and when it comes out, it's completely done. Like I said, this is the flatbed knitting. So you have the spools up in the top. It feeds it through the machine. It does its magic, and it spits out the fabric underneath. No, it does. It's how it's programmed, how you program the stitches, and it automatically does it, and it's really interesting. So here we're coming into the aspect of the creation up to the garments. When the flatbed knitting gets outputted, the process is you're going to snip out any remaining parts, any lingering parts onto the piece on the flatbed knitting. And then after that, you're going to put it onto the machine to link it. This is a linking machine. Yes, you could do it by hand, but this is, like I said, I'm teaching is the manufacturing at mass quantities. So here you put in that portion that I showed you, and you don't want to have access, so that's where they pull it to the side, do the quality control, measure it, because when they do the linking, you don't want to say, oops, it doesn't add up. Then you could do the hand finishing. When you're looking at qualities of a sweater, and you're looking at a garment, automatically people understand quality. When you're hitting a clientele to a higher level, they understand that things have to be hand finished. They know that type of product. And between their friends, they talk about, they point it out. They're like, ooh, let me look at that sweater. Yeah, but it's cashmere, but wait a second, why is it machine sewn? So they understand the difference in quality. That's where you can get your price tag pushed up a little bit higher. So it's very important understanding the details. And the reason I'm going into those little small details is that if you're interested in building really taking your things and getting it manufactured and sold out, to open market, to the little details that you look into. After it's finished by hand, it gets put into the machine, do that final wash or just dry to make sure that the shrinkage is correct. And then they press it. And let's not forget the cleaning and making it sure that it's really clean, nicely specced out to get it done for packaging. Then you have the whole selection of sweaters. We're talking about today the tubular. This is actually, it's similar to a sock machine, but in much bigger scale. It's a tubular machine. This is actually to do bedspreads. And this tubular machine, it comes out in the circular form, but they slice it at the end and then use it as a bedspread.
So it's knitted?
It's knitted. It's knitted. It's and then I'm not sure if okay, if you see on the right-hand side, there's all the little tubes that you have to the right of the thread. So it's actually this company that I took a picture of. I was doing some videos in Mexico. I was there for 3 months and doing some videos with them to introduce and show a little of their services that they do there. But this is a factory that does for different type of mattress companies. So they do the toppings for it. And it's actually interesting, that tubular knitting, it leaves also a fiber in between. And it's this is really to get you to think out of the box, not necessarily think it needs to be done in sweaters. Things could be blended together and, blended with other fibers, and just the aspect of having a small percentage of alpaca versus the whole sweater, it brings up the value and brings up the pricing onto the product, onto any product. If somebody's having bedding and they says, oh, it's 20% alpaca, it's a really good selling point for any consumer. So here we have all type of product does get washed, bleached, or processed before it goes out of the factory. This is just some heavy duty washing, so it pre-shrinks, and these are the products that it comes out. So whenever it gets computerized, it gets programmed into the machine, and it automatically does those stitches in and out to create those different type of patterns. That's a whole industry in itself. And as all the ones that I've been speaking to you about, they're all their own industry themselves. They have their own, they have their own groups, associations like this. They have their own different type of meetings, shows. So it's a very big industry. Now that the fabric is made, now let's create. Like I said earlier, I'm going to be going back. What I think of creating is starting from the textile. A lot of people think of designing, and they think of designing in the aspect of, let's make a garment. I think let's create, let's design. I did put design a little bit later, but I think that the creative part starts with embellishment. And how can I not start the creative part without talking about embroidery? Embroidery, I'm not sure if you guys are anywhere familiar onto embroidery. This is called multi-head embroidery. There's several embroidery machines, and I'm going to just briefly speak to you about them. I'm not going to go into details. That's a whole different presentation and a much longer one, just in the embroidery aspect. But this is called multi-head embroidery, and it's in the factories, it's mostly 20 heads. But each of these heads has a circumference, depending on the machine maker, it has a circumference of 20 and a half inches. And the computer generated embroidery machine comes with different attachments that you can purchase on to lay down, cord, to the thread to play with. Sometimes some of them lead down sequence. It's a whole big world. And this is where I spent most of my years. This is going back a lot of years. I'm not going to say how many years. This was a portion of our staff, and this is actually in a Shifley shop. This is another embroidery company. But the reason I put this this slide together here is that considering that I had an embroidery, mostly it was, my company was based out of multi-head embroidery machines. This is Shifley. But I would make sure that my staff knew what was the other type of machines that they were doing products for. That way they could understand the repeats, understand how it's done, and simulate or make it close enough onto the machines that we utilized. So this is how, like right now, the design that we have right here is something that we did for Oscar de la Renta. Oscar de la Renta is actually his design, and that's one of the designers that I was totally impressed in the industry. When I went to show him the collection to get inspiration, I had little circles. And those little circles, he says, I love your circles, but I want this circle. I know you did it on Shifley, right? And I'm like, the word Shifley, a lot of people do not know. They look at me like I have like two heads, like, what is Shifley? It's these all over machines. And he said, well, you do on Shifley, so this is a 24 quarter, a 12 quarter, and he would repeat I'm like, oh God, he's like, my God. So he sketched out, can we change this design to this, and can you copy it, and can you bring it to me tomorrow? Shifley machines, you can't really do that. If you look at the next slide, this is the Shifley machines. And actually, it does Venice lace. I'll explain to you the details later, but I want to start with the machine. See these little punching tapes? Now it's a little bit more upgraded that you could do it on the computer, but this is the Shifley industry in the US, and this is the system that they still run. You still digitize and program it onto a computer, but then you have to punch it and create this punching, and then create this punching to put it onto the machine, to load up your machine. You can't turn into a garment in the next day. And three styles. So because my employees knew the machines, they could turn around and say, okay, this is a 12-inch, this is a full quarter, 12 quarter and 24 quarter. Let's spit it out. Let's get into them for tomorrow. And we ended up doing his runway skirt. And a lot of my designers, because they didn't know, they would call, can you come and take a look at this and really define what this is? Is this natural fiber or regular fiber? I'm like, I can't believe how they graduated college. No, but that's the importance of understanding what is that surrounds you. Because then you can end up servicing or helping or working on to niches that you didn't think that you would be able to do it. But if you have a glance of understanding, you can go into depth later. But if you have no clue on it, that's where it makes a big difference. So getting just a glance onto something and says, wait a second, I know that. Let me just research. I mean, I know Google is great to just turn around and Google something, but having a view and understanding a little bit of it is really a help. So these machines, going back to this one really quick, if you embroider it onto paper, on their paper, it's like their gauze, you embroider it onto their gauze, you can create Venice lace. Then that fabric gets boiled into a treatment, and the paper dissolves. So it comes out to a Venice lace, and you have a sample here that you can take a look later. I can bring them around. But it's actually what you see on wedding dresses and what you see on necklines. Now you have them a little bit more automated. And I think this is more of a quilting machine, that it has quilting underneath, in between. All the different patterns, because it's much more automated. This is actually not an embroidery machine, it's a regular sewing machine, rigged to look like a rigged to be, when I say rigged, if you see these patterns on the side, the machine will automatically come when it hits the pattern and it goes back up. It knows because it's hitting the edge. This is actually another quilting, this is actually a whole different industry. It's a quilting industry. These long embroidery machines are hand maneuvered. And yes, you can put it on the computer, program it, and place it, and it would do it automatically. But these you could, hand maneuver your designs onto it. And the quilting industry is very interesting because you're doing a lot of one of the pieces. And there's a huge show in Houston that shows all the talent and all of the people that are creating beautiful, amazing things. Okay, enough of embroidery. Here we go into the different, this is actually, I'm showing you the different companies in New York City. This is actually a pleating company in New York City. It is A&E, and they have the pleating. They actually do it that old school. I mean, they do have a little bit of everything, but these old patterns of pleating were created, and they place the fabric underneath. They roll it up and put it into high temperatures, and then the skirts that you see on the left-hand side, it comes out completely pleated. You can come up with different designs. The patterns have that. The pattern's already integrated with the bends and the twists onto it. Then you have the sewing machines. This is actually a tucking machine. You have all the elastic and the threads onto the side. You can put some elastic if you want it. Put all these, all the dress gets fed there, fed through the machine, and it actually stitches down and creates those pleats. I'm not sure if you've seen those men's shirts, the guayaveras they call them. They have all the pleats going down here. It's done with machines like this. And then you could control how many of those wires you're going to utilize. This is actually a stud placing machine. This machine, you can create a design, program it to the machine, and it would lay down hot studs. You could do that manually with a little small pen, but this one does it really fast. You can create designs. A lot of the companies, what they do is they create it and they place it onto a plastic, and you can buy it in quantities onto that paper plastic. Then you throw it on top of your t-shirt, and with a regulated iron, you can press it on and iron it on. Because these are just necessarily to iron on or press on to a product or press on to a plastic, then you can process and place it onto a fabric in mass quantities. Now, the other things that you could do with the fabric, the textile, is the printing. This is actually, I'm only gonna be showing you two types of printing. This is actually placement printing. Put the t-shirt in, print it out. Or I would say t-shirt, it would be a sector of a garment, place it in, then you have the machine printing. And these are actually not that big of there's bigger equipment than this. This is just middle of the line. You print it, and it rolls up to the fabric, and then you take that fabric to a washing process that would seal it. Then we have the laser. Laser is amazing for a lot of different things. This one's actually just carving out a leather piece. But the laser could simulate printing. If you do a very light onto it, it burns the fabric, and it could create a design. So similar to this, you could create a whole design onto laser. You just have to, before you go through the process, you have to test it and make sure it doesn't burn through the fabric. In addition to that, they've created a lot of cutting, machine cutting with laser. So it's really the density to the product. So this is a laser of machine products, the fabric, so it gives a unique textile feel. And they're using a lot of the laser also for, cutting the whole batches of fabric or prototypes for samples. A lot of them in the US are purchasing the machine. Okay, let's go into design. Anybody have any questions on the embellishment part? No embellishment questions? Uh-huh.
Just out of ignorance, could you define hot studs a little better?
Hot studs? Hot studs. It's not a girl. No. Sometimes they program the machines, but no. Hot studs are stones. I'm not sure if you've seen Swarovski crystals. They have in a lot of the malls. It's crystals. Sometimes it's in pure form. Sometimes, not so pure form. A lot of them are plastic right now. So there's studs, and in the other side of the stud, it has glue. So I'm not sure if you've seen the T-shirts that have all this glitter onto it, and it looks like diamonds on it, but it's really not diamonds. It's really just cheap studs. Inexpensive, or it could be expensive. What?
Steve, turn around.
Oh,
It's just like this.
no, she gets a great example. There you go.
And the hotting process means that it partially melts it?
Yes, it's a glue. And they create it with glue. So it's actually instead of beading, a lot of the handwork, you're saving and that's the other aspect, so you understand that the focus that I push onto, the laser machine, it saves you time and cutting. The hot studs, it saves you time on beading. So if we're building an infrastructure into the US, you can't have home beaters, because realistically, you can't sew up a shirt and make a butterfly with the whole beading aspect of it. So that's where it comes back to, hey, these are the steps and process to manufacturing in a quicker way with the same type of look. The advantage of what I've learned in the years, I've designed for Oscar de la Renta and I've designed for Walmart. And knowing those two ends of it has helped me really understand all aspects of production and understand where is that you could cut corners without cutting corners. And I think that would be the best way to say it, to just turn around and say, okay, you know what, the beading could be done in these hot presses, but let's use Swarovski crystals. They have this type of crystal. It's still high end, but it's still, you're saving on the hand sewing. So those little details are known just because of understanding the whole industry. So all that, you designed your fabric, you've created your patterns, and now you go into the aspect of creating your garments. In design, you have a lot of the trade shows that either present you ideas onto textiles that you can get away with using their prototypes and telling your factories, here, this is how I want it. And at the same time, that they're doing half the creativity for you because you don't know the textile end of it. But a complete designer, I strongly believe, that will understand their textile and will create their garment from the beginning all the way to the end. That's where what I find more respectful and interesting onto the people in the industry that understand their market. So these are a few examples of pieces that you could see, and that you can just use them as prototypes and change it around for them. So the textile is created. You either added something to it, or you did it in the spinning mill, or you did it in the weaving. When you were weaving, you added a little detail. You added a woven. So now we go on to the draping. I'm briefly touching over this because a lot of the people already understand that you have to either drape or you do a flat pattern. I'm briefly discussing over to the design aspect because that's what usually they teach. What most importantly is your cutting ticket, Your cutting ticket is crucial. This is your Bible all through the aspect of production, because this is what keeps the process in shape. After you create your pattern and you created your cutting ticket, you take your pattern and you create paper patterns. If you drape it, you create your initial paper pattern. If you do it in paper and you do it on a design on paper, creating your pattern that way, you just use that one. Then this is one of my friends in the industry, and he has a marking and grading. This marking and grading is when you scan in the paper pattern, you mark the several points onto the pattern, and you can see the pattern right there. Then you go through the grading process. The grading process is a different type of sizing that you're putting onto the piece. So if you have this pattern piece is this sector of your garment, and this sector of the garment needs to go increments of 1/4 of an inch each size, because if I do 1 inch all around, it's going to be too. So this process is what controls the sizing that you have from a size 0 to a size 12. Then after you do your grading, you do your marking. Your marking is the laying out of your pattern onto paper. The reason that they lay the pattern onto paper is to, first of all, the reason that you have your cutting ticket, because it's going to tell me how many sizes I have to put on each garment. Because when I understand how many sizes have to go on each garment on my cutting ticket, I do my grading according to that. So if I'm doing 20 of size small and 50 of size medium, I'm going to have to do 2 size medium in my roller, because then you're taking that roll of paper with the marking and you're rolling it out to do your cutting. This is the other create a marker, the markers. So you're rolling the layers of your fabric back and forth. There's machines that do it. In the past, it used to be hand. Somebody would literally drag the roller back and forth. But now it's done on machine. And then you have the machine that cuts it. So these are all my pattern pieces for that garment. Then we do the bundling of the items. The bundling of the items is grabbing each single item that we're going to do to compose one piece, or a section. If you have a factory that's lined up of sewers on a row, you're obviously going to keep all your sizes, what matches the other, to bundle it into production. But if you're cutting all your items that are composed onto the piece. If you have here, this is another factory in New York City Garment Center, but she does only exclusive high-end garments. So the exclusive high-end garments, she's the only one that touches that garment. So she sews it from the beginning up to the end. That's more of a production, manufacturing. He sews the pieces that need to get done, and he passes it to the girl on the other side, and consequently, at the end of the row, you have your full complete garment. When I was going back and talking about the sewing of U.S. sewing, it's a little mind-boggling, or thinking, is it really possible to bring back manufacturing? Is it really possible? And I've butted heads, because I've been talking about this for the past 20 years. I said, it's coming back. And the people that came back to me are like, are you crazy? I go, it's coming back. The aspect of the retailers asking for quicker and quicker deliveries, there is no way that China could turn around in such a speedy way. We're not getting the big mass production that, you know, Walmart or Kmart delivers, or H&M, but we are getting some production back. Unless we do like other mills, like we still have from China, they're calling me and saying, hey, where can I manufacture in the US in mass quantities, because they want to be closer to their audience. They want to be closer to their towns that they're shipping in. So they want to open up a factory in LA because they can distribute from there faster. They can make something faster. They want to be closer to time. When I say about the US coming back with manufacture, I strongly believe the closer and more upgraded that we could come onto the equipment. A lot of these machines that I showed you today, they're very, very old and outdated machines. But the more automated machines that are coming into the US, it's the more realistic that we could come and bring in manufacturing. As you see right here, I erased I covered the manufacturer's name, but they came up with a semi-automatic machine. Like literally, you just feed the 2 pieces of fabric and it sews on its own. You could just feed it, feed it, walk, and hit the whole circle with automatic sewing. I mean, of course, investment onto building a whole factory with these type of machines is outrageous. But at the same time, the money would be there because our consumer, it's really covering the high-end market. That's why Europe is still existing. They have all the German manufacturers that have these machines, and they have built that infrastructure, that even that their price points are, they're covering that US, the high point market, but they're covering with this new fast equipment. So what they're not paying in fabric and what they paid into the machines, it really comes back to them because they're not paying in employees. So they only need a limited amount of employees to get it done. So, and this is actually just in sewing, and this is a denim one, and it's showing how, and that's what I have seen here, what they're doing. They're rigging the sewing machines, and there is a lot of sewing machines already that exist that accelerate processes. And in the sewing machine, here's a denim machine, but instead of you having to sew all individual lines to create a decorative stitch, these sew all 3 at the same time, similar to the tucking one that we showed you earlier before. But there is companies here in the US that concentrate in upgrading your equipment to make it to that standard, to be able to do a little bit faster in manufacturing and less painful. Like I explained to you here, that this is actually a factory in the New York City Garment Center that are manufacturing kids. But these pants are for the high-end market, and each of these little pants are retailing at $50. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to buy a 5-year-old $50 pant, but still, there is a market out there for it, and it is made in the U.S., and that market is looking for U.S. and be a little bit more conservative into their pieces. So there is a market out there, and she actually did the sweaters here in the U.S. There's a very big knitting industry here. And we're almost finished, so. This is actually the pressing. This is a high end. And the factories, obviously, if you guys have been in factories, doesn't matter if you say high end or low end, it's really not so fancy. You don't have the fancy floors. It's still a factory. And it's still, but this is actually the pressing. It's, and the quality control is very important in the pressing and cleaning of the pieces. This is actually, she's doing a wedding dress. And she's just pressing the wedding dress. There's a few different types of manufacturing, and I always talk about the vertical manufacturing and the wholesale manufacturing. Wholesale is more or less what you guys do, that you would take and I'm saying you guys, I'm not sure every single aspect. How many here do sell their fibers to companies and not look back? Just sell them. Well, wholesale is more or less like you just do the shearing of your alpaca and have the bundles of the alpaca lined up and then just sell it to somebody. So you're wholesaling your piece and not worrying about the next consumer. Wholesaler would be also the person that just does the manufacturing of a certain type of part onto the product and then just doesn't worry about any other aspect of it. And then the vertical manufacturing is somebody that does all the steps of their shirt, from the thread to the buttons to every single aspect up to their thread. So these are the different type of products. If you do want to go into the vertical, there's industry and products. We have the garments, we have the accessories, and we have the hard goods. The garments and the garments everybody knows. We have the women's, the children's, all the whole scheme of it. And accessories, we're really clear onto it. And then, but the industry that we really don't pay too much of attention is the hard goods. I consider the hard goods as in the home, the bedding, the furniture. And the hard goods is car, the plane, and the train. We're looking at car, plane, and train, the chairs, the covers, the little details that we don't pay attention to. This is just to open up our vision into where we were to sell our product. As crazy as it sounds, you don't think that this really high-end plane that they have going up in different countries, they wouldn't use an alpaca seating? Of course they would. It's just the whole aspect of me presenting you even this is just to really think out of the box. Think a little bit further of, let's just do a knitted sweater, a little, some socks and some products. Think out of the box and see where, if you do want to become a vertical, where do you want to go, what type of industry you would want to go to, and look more than just the clothing and the children's and the sportswear and the different type of industries. I've been talking so much, and you guys haven't said a word. Do we have any questions? There we go, the end. I'm going to leave to questions if there's any. Yeah. Well, there's two ways of selling something. You could sell it as a unique piece, but your price margin should be really, really high. But I kind of didn't understand too much of the question in the sense of.
So that it can, that I'm not just selling one fiber art piece, like if it was a scarf or boot cuffs or whatever. And let's say somebody liked it and said, oh, I want a dozen of those. I can't make a dozen of those. So I guess I'm trying to say, what kind of product is a good thing that can be easily replicated? And what would be your next steps? Yeah, what's the next step?
Well, there's you wouldn't want to replicate it, and that's the whole. I mean, you could do the same type of. I mean, you could do a frame, if I'm understanding correctly, a picture frame with a little bit of the fiber, a portion of it, and.
Are you thinking of designing something and having somebody else replicate it for you?
Oh, somebody else. Oh, okay. Where are the steps are.
Step number 2, it's like, okay, you've launched this item into a fashion show in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. There's going to be a fashion show, and I'm in it.
Okay.
And the whole point of being in it for me was just to expose people to the fact that there is, items to be, made with alpaca. But what if somebody, wanted me to
Replicate it.
that
Okay, now I got it. I'm sorry. Okay, now I got it. So there's different directions you can get. There is people that do specialize onto taking a product to a different level, and if they have units and amounts to it, if they say I want 20,000, the more of the units, obviously the better it is, because you can get it mass produced. But you really have to disattach yourself to that item. Like, you really have to, like, okay, just sell them the piece and say, okay, sell them. Yeah, that's where, but regardless of what it is, you can turn your back. They can copy that item. And with what money are you going to sue them, really, if it's a big corporation? So if you can get some money out of it, that I would sell it for a higher price, because prototypes and samples in New York, in those runway shows, in those artist shows, they sell for like $1,500. Easily. Like unique pieces that you came up with the concept, but then you have to disattach yourself to it, and they would send it overseas, and they would do whatever they need. They would send it to Peru, or they would send it to other places, but you have to look at it as an artist. I'm doing it, and I'm closing my eyes, and I can't know what it gets done. And that's very hard for an artist. It's very hard, but after you sell 3 or 4 of them, you're like, oh, this is not that bad. And that's one of the things that I did as when I was starting out. I would create 10 of it, but you could become a slave to it. So if you wanted, you could become a slave to only coming up with concepts. And a lot of the designers get spoiled. They get spoiled because right now you have, and that was a big aspect of what happened to me. India would come, because I did embroidery, India would come with a whole collection of embroidery and said, you do production with me, I give it to you for free. So it's like, I can't compete with that. I'm like, so they would I would design, present it to them, but I couldn't sell the prototypes as I used to sell them at $3,000, $2,000 a pop. Because India's giving it to them for free, and they want something close to it, but India's giving it to me for free, so go buy it in India. But then it was like, when I started seeing my pieces on runway shows after I showed them the initial concept, I'm like, buzzwords. So that's why I was like, I got so disillusioned with the whole concept of the manufacturing. Here I'm killing myself to be in New York City Garment Center presenting concepts to designers, and then here you're penny pinching me because, but that's a whole new presentation, a whole nother day. But just disattach yourself and just sell it to the highest price point. Or if not, we could talk about it later. I know a lot of good people that could help you going through the manufacturing process, but you have to pick what you want to do. Because you want to create or you want to manufacture. That's one thing that if you get thrown into different directions, you have to be very defined on what you really want to do. Because the manufacturing process, it's not an easy cookie. So either you hand it over to somebody and you split the cost with the person, or sell it and keep on creating.
We're a small industry.
Mm-hmm.
We're having a hard time bridging the gap between going from a cottage industry to the next step. For example, if you go to an LLB, Land's End, they say, we love your product, we love the socks, we love this. Can you provide 100,000?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a niche area that you could recommend that we would be best to look at in terms of making this next leap?
Yes, you have the small boutiques. This is the thing. You said you were a small industry. I was doing a little bit of the research. You started in 1900. It's not really, 1990s, the industry started with alpacas here. And it's really, you've grown so much for the time frame that you've been in business. Yeah, I feel that of what I've seen. You're the only industry that has been growing versus everything has been leaving. You guys have been steadily growing. So I would give yourself a little pat in the back on that aspect. And that's where I really appreciate, and I really strongly believe that you guys can grow a lot more. It's the way that you do it, and then the smart approach to it. There is a LL Bean. The fact that you approach them, say, we can only do smaller batches. and figure out where the smaller batches are. Give them a happy medium. They can run small programs onto their stores and just keep it on 1 or 2 stores and say, hey, this industry is very small. I can't promise you this much. How about this much? And we'll do a small test in one of your stores. Then at the other end of it, I wouldn't be intimidated to even approaching other countries and saying, partnering, you get the order, they don't know the contact, and you supplying a portion of that, that same product with the other order that you're buying from them. So you're holding the order. Say, I can guarantee you for US, for a small batch for one store, this much, but I can get this other production, I can get this other production from another mill. From other relationships that I have with other places. And
We recognize that grown in the USA, made in the, well, I should say grown in North America, because we're using a North America perspective that includes Canada and potentially Mexico. But grown in North America, processed in North America, knitted in North America, has a value to it.
And I wouldn't be intimidated to say it, the Americas.
The Americas.
Yes. Because Peru is still America. You're still controlling the order. You're not giving out the order. You're still controlling the order and promote it more as Americas. So alpaca from the Americas. You're still controlling the orders. You still have to have in your tab here where the country of origin is, and you really don't. I think of the fiber, you don't. It's where it's sewn. You can buy the fabric wherever. The fabric per se. You have to write here where it's sewn. So if you're sewing in the US, you can buy the fabric from them, bring it here, sew it, made in America. And then in the label, in the Americas. So it's still a way of getting around it. Yeah, it's like every other industry.
Americas sewn in the USA.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So how do I get material from Peru without having to go to Peru and get them?
Oh, there's a lot of places that, there's a lot of fabric companies that do represent Peru mills. Yeah. Well, I'll go fly and get it for you. No, just joking. Oh, I love Peru, it's beautiful. But I love America more. So it's, So, but there is a lot of mills here in the US that do represent, that bring fabric from all over the world. So I can put you in contact with one of them if you need to. But that's a good way to go around it. Uh-huh.
If you collected all the bags of fleece and all the barns and all the closets and all attics
Mhm.
in the U.S., there would be so much fleece that it could definitely sustain
Yeah,
a commercial mill.
yeah.
But that's not happening. Do you have any recommendations on seeing how that could be, who you would contact, or how that would be put into process to get someone interested in putting a commercial mill in the U.S.?
Mhm.
They would use the alpaca fiber. Because if we collected all this fiber, there would probably be, I would think, enough fiber. I know people that have hundreds of pounds of fiber just sitting. It's doing nothing. Well, if they stored it properly, it would not need to be stored. Mine is all stored within polymers and full of carbon. But some people throw it in their barns. I know it's going to get mousy and everything else. But how do you ever get around to having?
It's really, I know of a few people that are willing to invest in businesses, and it would be something just opening up a location. And I know there is some, after speaking to somebody today, I know there is places that they collect them. My point of view, I think that everybody should get their fair share, but if everybody tries to do things for a penny and get it for a penny, so that's where it's wrong, because it shouldn't be that you guys are doing all the effort and raising the animal and doing the shavings and doing everything and just barely getting to feed the animals and to do the whole aspect of it. But I know there's people that do invest and investing into factories and trying to establish factories here domestically. That's where, you know, I was, I don't know if anybody here, somebody was asking me that they're interested in working in a collaboration here, but they want to see how the fiber really gets processed to their machines. They want to understand how to blend it or do something. And they're looking into, I mean, this is not something that's going to happen like next year, but it's something along the lines that they just want to test and see how it works. But yeah, it's really getting, you know, getting a company to be able to, a company or several companies to be able to do it. I know you guys have at least enough animals that you could do it. And I don't know how many people are willing or wanting to do it because they'd rather make money and doing it at their own farm because they're not making any money on it. So, I mean, it's something to look into. Something to look into. They're just, anybody else? What?
Well, I'm just gonna ask one more question. Not about
You can ask me
studs.
20.
Not about studs. Depending on where you live in the United States, the cost of having an animal on your farm is somewhere around $200, $300 a year.
Uh-huh.
That derives approximately 5 pounds or maybe a little more of usable fiber per year.
Mm-hmm.
And if you divide that out per pound, you know, per cost per pound, you're getting into a
Yeah, but
pyramid.
you are getting tax breaks, though.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, not necessarily that much, but
Uh-huh.
some people up north have, you know, more hay, more cost of
Mm-hmm,
production. My point is, many members of our industry understand vertical integration, and if they simply send off the raw fleece, they get $5 per pound. If they haven't made it into roving, they can get a little bit more. If they made it into yarn, they can get a little bit more. If they get it into a finished good, that's why socks have done so well, because you can bring them back to the farm and sell them. Is there, cashmere is an example of a well-known high-end fabric which alpaca can compete directly one-on-one with. And yet, cashmere is able to garner a fairly high price per pound, and we haven't been able to break through that barrier. Are there mechanisms or suggestions that you have for us to help us break through, to develop that chicken and the egg, where producers can then begin to get more dollars per pound of fiber that allows them to feed their animals per year?
I think you guys have a really great niche that cashmere doesn't have. I do put my hats down into the history that you've done onto your alpacas, and you know it's all about the marketing. It's all about the marketing. It all comes down to the marketing. And when it comes down to the marketing, you know, cashmere comes from a goat. And I know we've worked very hard into putting a face onto the image of it. Let's see how far would that get, but the cashmere is a goat. Alpaca is an animal. So maybe like a fancy name, that could be one. It's just a real, it's just that little marketing that just drives people to that next level. And I'm not giving you suggestions to go back, okay, what should I call it now? You know, no. Is that twist. But you have to be ready and set up for it. Because you could do all the marketing, but then when you make that little, like, few mistakes, the retailers are not forgiven. And then, and they can destroy you. Like, so if you get an LL Bean to order a huge order and you cannot deliver, so it's really being prepared for that industry, that marketing that you're preparing. So it's actually working just parallel into the manufacturing aspect, understanding who's the sewing, understanding who the company is going to be doing everything for you, getting set up, and then being afraid to say no. If you don't want to put your, depend on Peru to bring you some additional alpaca skins because you don't have enough, you couldn't collect it all through all U.S. and get it through the machines, be afraid to say you don't want to depend. I mean, one of the things that South America is amazing, and their products are amazing, but one of the things that they have a tough time is they have the mañana, tomorrow. Their concept is it's really, you get an order and you mess up an order. For any of the retailers, I have a lot of industries here. So first, being afraid to say, I can't take this order. I can only give you, let's give a sample batch and see how it works. If it flies off the shelf, believe me, you fly somebody over there, bring some, you know, and work out where you can get it through for the next season around. The thing is that you have to understand that alpaca is something that's for the spring, the fall, so you have a whole year to prepare. So that's where that year you can prepare for the order or prepare for what you're getting, but don't be afraid to start in smaller increments.
Unless you're doing something like hard goods.
What, the hard goods?
Doing something like hard goods,
That's where, yeah.
which can go year round.
Yeah, go year round. And that's the ideal, like if you're doing home accessories or, you know, doing some, yeah. Anybody else? Anybody else? Well, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you liked the presentation. Like I said, I didn't go into depth into anything in specific, but if you need any more information, I could give you. I do some small videos onto each detail, onto each of the points that I touch for the most part. You know, I have making of ties. I have the making of the different type of products in my website. So I can hand you my card, and you'll have access to all of that. You know, just don't feel afraid to pull me aside and ask me any questions. Thank you very much.